So can I start now?
Yes, sir. We'll formally begin now.
Right.
Okay. I can see so many of our regular attendees here. What a pleasure to see you all. I formally welcome each one of you to the 65th Aadharshila Talk at RRIS. It's a great pleasure to be able to have such speakers like Wing Commander Pradeep Deshpande ji with us. We are looking forward to listening to Sir. Let me introduce formally. Sir is a fighter pilot, has been with Indian Air Force, schooled in Kendriya Vidyalayas across the country. Wing Commander Pradeep Sir joined the National Defense Academy when in grade 11 and then onwards into the Indian Air Force. Commissioned as a fighter pilot, he flew various fighter planes for 22 years. After his premature retirement from the IAF, he joined Air India, flying commercial aircrafts for 16 years. He is a flying instructor for over 20 years and participated in the Kargil War. His passion is music, which he pursues almost every day. He is a middle distance runner and has participated in 10 half marathons in Mumbai. He has also been associated with the youth through a couple of NGOs for the last 15 years. Wing Commander Pradeep enjoys flying the most and considers it as the focus that enables him to do all the other activities that he does. I'm so sure Sir is full of such interesting anecdotes to share with us that are going to keep us hooked on for the next 1 hour or so. Sir, I won't take any more of your time. Would like to know from you, how have your teachers, your school and parents shaped your life, and how has your term with the Indian Air Force shaped your character and helped you navigate this life with expertise? Over to you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Jaya. It's namaste, friends. It's a huge privilege for me to be among such elite, august, eminent people, honestly. And I'm carefully adding these adjectives because I fully understand what a teacher's role is. My mother's been a teacher. My sisters have been teachers. My own daughter is an early child educator. So I understand the role, the huge role that teachers play in the lives of, in our lives, actually. So my introduction has already been done, so I won't delve on that any further. But I'll start. I'm not here to lecture you all on anything because you all are, you've seen so many things in life, and I will just narrate my journey through life and how institutions, how teachers and people have influenced me and helped me, as the topic goes, navigate the skies of life in more ways than one. So, as I said, I was, as Dr. Jaya said, I was in the NDA from 1978 to 81. Thereafter, a fighter pilot for about 22 years in the Indian Air Force. Then a commercial pilot with the Air India for 16 years. And now I am a small entrepreneur and still flying general aviation, small aircraft. So I've been flying for the last 40 years now. And I am actually dread doing anything else. So I'm continue to look forward to flying. Anyway, so coming back to where I would like to start this talk is with an anecdote that that actually emphasizes something very, very profound. This goes back to the July, August, September of 1971, and the place is Chandigarh. the 1970, the wars of 1971 war, the clouds of the 1971 war are slowly coming up. And there is this boy, a 10-year-old boy, who studies in a school across the runway and sees these planes like you see on the screen streaming across the skies every day. And in the dawn and the dusk, you see these flame coming out of the rear. And I said, if anyone has to do anything in life, it has to be this. So coincidentally, there was this boy in my class who had a brochure of a Sainik school, and I asked him what this was, and he said, this is where you go, and from here you can go to the NDA and then onwards to the Air Force. So I said, wow, I mean, it was like a signal. So I promptly carried that brochure home, and I told my mother, Mom, here this is, I'm leaving and I want to join the Sainik school. Being the only son, my mother blew up completely, and she says, there is no way that you are leaving the house at this age. So I wouldn't budge. So she had many ways to solve this problem, but the way she took it was she went to my principal, and she took me straight to my principal, and she went to him and she said, Dr. Kharab, this boy is wanting to leave home, and she was in tears. So Dr. Kharab said, Mrs. Deshpande, just hang on. Just tell me the story. So he says, no, he wants to join the Air Force and he wants to leave. So Mrs. Deshpande, can you just wait outside for a minute? So now he asks me, he says, what's the thing? So I said, sir, I want to join the NDA. I want to become a fighter pilot and everything else. So he says, great. So what's the problem? She says, my mother won't let me go. So he said, but why do you want to go now? So I said, but then that's how I go. Can I be a fighter pilot? So he said, son, I'll get a promise from your mother that after class 11, she will allow you to join the NDA. But you stay on at home for the next 6 years. Principal was God for me. So he sent me out. He called my mother. He extracted the promise from her. And this golden, next slide, please. And this golden triad, this lovely triad was completed. May I have the next slide, please, Nissa? So this was it. The secret of education lies in respecting the pupil. This was said by Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American philosopher, but put to practice by my principal, Mr. Kharab. He respected even at that age of 10, I respected the fact that I wanted to do something and I resolved to do something. But at the same time, he made sure that the parent wasn't removed from this whole equation. And then he completed, may I have the next slide, please? The triad that I call, which is between the teacher, the parent, and the pupil. This loveful triad is complete. And I mean, this anecdote was what actually completed this whole thing. And I only urge, I'm sure there are teachers right now here who do these things, but often we hear that this sort of a thing has kind of waned a little bit. So I only I would only advise, not even advise, just suggest that, the teachers repose this faith in their students, repose this faith in their children, in their parents, and reinforce and rebuild this triad and get the students to do what I think they deserve to do. So moving on from there, the 16-year-old, the story of how I landed up after the 11th into the NDA is another one for another time, because that was again exciting work. My mother had just bought time for 6 years. She still really wasn't intent on me going to the NDA, but that's another story. Nevertheless, this less than 16-year-old boy lands up at the gates of the National Defense Academy, green behind the ears, not knowing what is in store for him, and comes to this imposing gates of the National Defense Academy at 16. So I landed up over here, and what I thought and what I had seen was the place was a lot different than that. Can I have the second slide, please? So that's what it was definitely a cradle for leadership, was what we were told. And we were told that, we had some fancy accommodation, good food, good messes and everything else. We had cycles that we thought we would ride, but what we landed up was doing is what on the next slide. May I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So these are the buildings of the National Defense Academy. The Sudan block is one on the left, and the quarterdeck and the science block is on the right. Now this is the place that actually shaped my career as, or not even my career, my character as a youth. So here we were taught, apart from just physical discipline, you see the next slide. These are some more images of the National Defense Academy. And on the next, please. Yeah, so this is where we landed up. We thought these cycles were actually for riding, but this is what we were most of the times we landed up doing. Landed up carrying the cycles across the roads. But this was just a sense of physical, this just to bring in a sense of physical discipline. But what it taught us, what the NDA taught us, was its motto, which was service before self. It is very difficult for a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old lad to understand this. And as they say, leaders, people don't follow leaders, people don't follow what the leaders say. They follow what the leaders do. So we were taught many things, but we saw our seniors, we saw our divisional officers, we saw the commanding officers of various battalions, narrate their stories, and we would see them in action. We would see exactly what they were doing, and the ethos that was brought about in the National Defense Academy was about responsibility. You were always asked questions why your turnout was bad and why you were late for a particular thing, but you were not expected to give any other answer other than no reason. Because there is no reason why you are falling short. That is how the military works. You could not say, I got a plate, I missed, my cycle was punctured. No, you had to cater for everything. So although each time the senior would ask, why are you late? Why is your turnout not so? Why your hair so long? Why haven't you shaven today? The only answer was no reason. And you learned to take responsibility for it. You learned to take the punishment that came with it, and you did it with pride. There was no sense of shame in that punishment, because that punishment, you said, okay, this is the punishment I deserved because I did not do a particular thing the way the institution wanted me to do it. And that is how we got on in the NDA. Cheating and dishonesty over there meant relegation. Relegation means a student loses 6 months. The first time he cheats or lies, he loses 6 months of seniority. The second time, he's thrown out of the academy. That is how the whole the character of a child or a youth was being brought up in the National Defense Academy as far as cheating and dishonesty was concerned. The other thing that the NDA did was taught us what was sportsmanship. Today, I find sports devoid of sportsmanship for some reason. Winning has become everything. There it was the responsibility of the captain of the losing team in the finals to first cheer the losing team. So it was always, if Bravo Squadron had lost to India Squadron, the India Squadron skipper would first say 3 cheers for Bravo Squadron. Hip hip hooray. And only after that would the trophies be distributed and prizes be given to the winning team. So that is how the culture was. So you learn to respect your opponent. You learn to give him the leeway that he deserved. And the other great thing about NDA was a lot of us came with some old sporting capabilities such as golf and tennis and squash and badminton and stuff, but nothing. No single individual games were encouraged. It was all about team games. It was all basketball, football, not even cricket actually. Basketball, football, hockey, and other such cross-country and such team games. Idea being that it was the weakest link in the chain that counted. So you had to take the last guy along. Until you took that last guy along, your squadron won't really win any major points. So that was how the feeling of sportsmanship through sports, the whole idea of team building and being, the whole trust phenomena was brought in. And I heard somewhere about which brings me to the word trust. Now, the trust is something that cannot be taught. Is what we believed. Trust is something that just happens. Trust builds when you see your buddies doing something and they know that you will do it for them, and that's why they go ahead and do it. I'll cover that a little later when we talk about courage in the battlefield. The other thing was about honor code. We were 16, 17, 18, full of mischief. You can still rein a guy in, but that those mischiefs would still come in. And the Sudan block picture that you guys saw a little while earlier has a lightning rod on top of it. This is the centerpiece of the National Defense Academy. Then there's one small anecdote about it. When we were cadets, we had an ambassador, or was it the chief of some major European country, was going to be visiting the National Defense Academy. And it was a big thing. So some cadets decided to play the fool, and in the night, climbed the Sudan block and put the riding pith hat on top of the lightning conductor, just to tease the dignitary. So now this dignitary came and early morning, and the commandant took him to show him the Sudan block. And when they face the Sudan block, they see one pith hat hanging on top. The commandant went wild. The next 3 days, all activities stopped at the academy, and there was only what we used to call ragda. But no one wound up. No one commented who had done it. At least 15 or 20 people would have known who had done it, but they were willing to take that because they understood that it is one of our guys. But it's the whole thing of honor code, that I'm not going to let my buddy down. They're willing to take the punishment for 3 days, but nobody squeaked to say that who had done it. So it was the whole thing about honor code and not letting your buddies down, which eventually translates into the battlefield. The other thing that NDA also provided us was culture. Cultural meets used to be organized. It is difficult for people to, when I tell them to lunch and dinner and breakfast were parades. It was called a breakfast parade, a lunch parade, and a dinner parade. You had to be there. You could not say, I'm not hungry. You had to be there for the food. Each and every meal had to be had. Unless you were sick in quarters, you had to come for every single meal. So there was no choice there. So when it came to hobbies and clubs, they had to be attended. When there was cultural evenings, we used to have great people. I remember one anecdote where Jagjit Singh and Chitra Singh had come. They were still in the they had just broken this. I'm talking about 1979-80, when they had just about come on the ghazal scene. Now, ghazal is something that an 18-year, 17-year-old boy really doesn't want to listen to. But it's a cultural show, and everybody had to be there in that Habibullah Hall, which is a huge hall, 3 tiers, and full. Not only full, there were sergeants and sergeant majors, the cadet appointments, who were ensuring that these cadets would stay awake as well through this whole thing. So I remember Jagjit Singh in the middle of, after one of the ghazals, saying, "मैं बहुत खुश हूं कि आप इतनी बड़ी तादाद में यहाँ आए हैं," little realizing that we had no choice in coming and making his whole taadad. Notwithstanding that, we had something still permeated through. While we at that point we probably cursed and thought it would have been better if I was sleeping in my cabin and not attending this. But there were so many renowned and eminent people who would come and give their talks and things like that. And I'm sure something must have permeated through the whole thing into us, so to make the Indian Armed Forces what it is today. So,
as I know that music is one of your passions, so
yes.
did it originate from that ghazal night?
Perhaps it did. Who knows? So we had, perhaps it did. And today I'm a big ghazal follower, actually. So it perhaps could have been that. And there was a mix. There were Western classical presenters. There were dramas. There were plays. Of course, even movies were compulsory. Every Wednesday we had an English movie, and every Saturday we had a Hindi movie, and they were all compulsory. So, and of course, there's another anecdote when one of the actresses of those era, when she would come, she came on the screen in somewhat skimpy costume, and somebody whistled, and that was the end of the movie for all of us. So again, it was all back on outside the movie hall, and Ragda goes on again. Anyway, that was that. Moving on, today also the National Defense Academy has a very strong alumni association, and the whole fundamental on which the National Defense Academy was built was that it's a tri-service institute where all of us train together, and after there we trifurcate and join the various forces, the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. And later on in life, when there's inter-service operations that were going on, it would always be, you would know somebody from some course, some ex-NDA or somebody else, and, things would just move in really quick, at a really very quick and brisk pace to have things done. And even today, not only battlefield, later on when people are visiting, I have to take my family to Leh, you would just put in a word somewhere, and all arrangements are made. Okay, it doesn't matter whether he was your squadron or not. Okay, he's ex-NDA. He and his family needs to be taken care of. So that is the kind of esprit de corps that NDA developed for us. And can I have the others next few slides, please? So yeah, this is the squadron. This is where the cadets are housed. Each one of the windows that you see is called a cabin, and every cadet gets an individual cabin. And this is where we reside for all of the 3 years that we are in the NDA. Next slide, please. These are some of the images that I thought I would share with you. These are the kinds of activities that we did while we were in the NDA. And
is this your picture, sir?
No, this is not mine, actually. I downloaded this from the website.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next picture is of the drill square, which is where the passing out parade of the National Defense Academy is conducted every 6 months. The building that you see in the background is called the Quartermaster's Fort, and the entire parade is inside this fort. And as the parade starts, the cadets moving out of the Quartermaster's Fort and coming for the passing out parade. So the final picture that I share with you of the NDA is my squadron. That is the passing out. Can I have the last slide, please? From the next slide. Yes. Okay. So this is my passing out course. This is the 60th India Squadron course that passed out in June of 1981. And these are all of us. Most of them are around. Some of them, sadly, we lost. One of them in Kargil, another one to an air accident. Fortunately, the rest of them are alive and kicking. So from the NDA, I moved.
I would just like to interfere here. Sorry, but we would like to express our sincere gratitude to all those who have been serving the country. Hats off and salute to each one.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. So from the National Defense Academy, after 3 years of grueling training, we landed up at the Air Force Academy. And after 1 year of training, I was commissioned in the Indian Air Force. We have the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the crest of the Indian Air Force, and that is my picture finally, standing next to the aircraft that I last flew in the Indian Air Force, which is the MiG-21 Biz.
More than any Bollywood poster can imagine to be.
Thank you. Very kind of you to say that. So Nabha Sparshan Deeptam, which is touch the sky with glory, that was the motto of the NDA, and I was of the Indian Air Force. And the aircraft that you see in the background is the aircraft another older version of the aircraft is what I used to see in 1971 from the school. And I actually felt my life almost fully complete the day I flew the MiG-21 solo in Tezpur in 1982. And I still cherish that moment. And I always thank God for, allowing me to have dreamt that at an early age, such as 10 years, and jumping through so many hoops before. Actually, there were so many variables, and I could easily not have, even one of them had gone, out of sync. I may not have actually achieved what I did. So, I thank God for that. I landed up where I did. So Indian Air Force, I got my commission in the Indian Air Force in the year 1982. And as it happens, we are initially trained together, and then depending on the merit and the individual choice and aptitude of the aircraft of the individuals, you land up in fighters, And this is the first fighter plane that I flew in the Indian Air Force, which is the MiG-23 MF. A little bit about the Air Force and the usual questions that.
I just hope that you're not mixing up the years. You don't look that old.
No. I'm 59 years, full 59 years of age as of today. So the first question usually is about fear of flying. People always ask, aren't you scared of flying? Did you ever feel scared of flying? Flying the fighter aircraft at 1,000 kilometers an hour over the desert at 100 feet, or over the sea, or in the dark, or in dark night. Well, actually, the fear of flying is overcome mostly by a training, confidence in your trainers, and the equipment that you fly. So once again, our instructors over there, teachers in a different way, they had very different challenges, because if you can imagine teaching a child, if you know what it is to teach a child a difficult subject with a whiteboard in your classroom, imagine teaching a child or teaching a person flying when you don't have boards, you don't have any hands to show anything, and you have to do that in a classroom which is in the air and constantly moving. So that is the challenge that our teachers, and that's why we had great admiration for them, and our first instructors or instructors who put their जिसको जिगर पे हाथ रख के बोलते हैं, सोलो भेजा जब हमें हम लोगों को. So hats off to them for having reposed and having that sort of confidence in us. So like I said, the fear of flying is overcome mostly by these things. And I used to always wonder, and especially during the training days, and this is an example that I tell a lot of people, including my own daughter, is about the period of pain that we go through when we start anything, whether it's cross country, whether it is long distance, middle distance running, or whether it's just exercising, or whether it is learning a new skill. So during flying in the initial days, it was so hard. We were made to do things, write things. Our pass percentage for tests was 100%. There was no question of failing in the core subjects. The non-core subjects were 80-85%, but the core subjects were 100%. And you got 1 mark wrong, you had to take the test again, and nobody wanted to fail. So we would sit the whole night trying to mug up things, trying to understand things. And we would, that time one day I said, why did I ever think about flying? Why did I want to do this? And even during the flights itself, the initial flying was very tough, because we didn't know what we were doing. We had to just, do a lot of things. Some of us were airsick, but just grit your teeth and continue. And then there comes a time, when you go through that, what I call the sonic barrier. The minute you go through that barrier, it's like none of the gateways to heaven open. And then there is only silence, and then there is only joy, and there is such complete satisfaction that is unimaginable. And those people who have done, who do distance running, or I say that it's easier to correlate it when you talk about a physical activity. We talk about runner's high, and we talk about what a feeling a guy gets when he crosses the finish line after a marathon. So the whole process is very grueling and hard, and probably very painful. But it is the pot at the end of the rainbow that keeps you going. And this we learned very early in life, and hence I think most of us succeeded in other fields as well. When even many of us, when we transitioned from the military to other fields, also, we knew that there is this period of pain. We knew that we had to go through this period, and we knew what was going to be, where the pot lied at the end of the rainbow. So that is a thing that I felt our flying training really taught us. Like I said, the training was hard. Now, the other thing that we were never taught in training, and that which can't be taught is courage in the battlefield. Courage in the battle. A lot of people ask how does one define courage? Actually, courage, people think, is absence of fear. Absence of fear is not courage. Courage is managing fear. You have to be fearful. It is unnatural for a person to be fearless. Now, if he's fearless, he's probably an exception, immune to certain things for some other reasons. But on an average, everyone fears, and everyone fears that we're designed to. So it is managing the fear that is actually how well a person manages fear is what is courage. When we moved into Avantipur in 2000 during Kargil War, we were the first people. 17th of May, we moved from a place in Punjab called Adhampur with the MiG-29 aircraft, and we moved to Avantipur, which is just next to Srinagar, and we had no idea what we were going there for. And soon things became clear, and things came sharply in focus when in the first 3 days of war, we lost 3 planes and 7 colleagues of ours. That was really bad. And then the worst thing was, or not the worst thing, but the other things, the challenges that we were looking at was that to the rest of the country, it was just a border skirmish. India was still playing England and Pakistan in World Cup cricket. It was only our families and us at that point in time who were facing this crisis. And now, as the flight commander of the squadron, and today we are all aware, we're all listening to news, we're listening to politics, and there is this debate that goes on in your head that am I being used as a pawn in this whole system? Did Ajay Ahuja die for no reason? Those kinds of questions. But that is where, you have to, as a leader, as a flight commander, and that time I was the senior most in my squadron, and that is the time you have to set things aside. And that is the time I actually had to sit with myself and ask these questions to myself repeatedly. How am I going to lead these people? What am I going to say? Because it's the first time we were going to face war. And the thing was that the terrain was so inhospitable. There was, even if your aircraft was hit, and you had ejected from the aircraft, you would still land up in an area from where there was very little chance of somebody going and picking you up and recovering them, which is what happened to some of the people who were lost during the war, because after ejection and after one of the helicopters went down. So it was definitely tough. But then that is what managing fear is. So we actually now came together. We would sit together and focus on the tactics that we were going to adopt. There was no discussion about the political angle to it, what was going to happen. We were just mission to mission, and this is what we were going to do. And that is the way we went one day at a time, and moved on and on. So that is what I call managing fear, and I would consider that as some sort of courage. For the Air Force, it is still not as much as it is for the Army, to whom I salute every single time, because I think their courage is raw courage. All of us have seen, many of us must have seen Shahenshah and a few others, which are true stories, absolutely true. I mean, I feel fact is stranger than fiction here, and people have done tremendous amount of things, in the face of battle. So that is how the courage on the battlefield is what I wanted to mention to you all. The other thing was about military leadership. In the military, a lot of people feel that it's all about ji sir, ha sir, yes sir, how much sir, 3 bags full sir. It is not true. It's not really that. Military is designed. There are people who demand this kind of thing. There are some imperialist people as well. I will not say there aren't, because there are always exceptions in every organization. But by and large, we are taught, and at least the people that I saw and I followed were people who considered their position as they were just as temporary custodians of that particular position. They never thought they were going to be there forever. It was not the chair was theirs for life. It wasn't that. They were given a position by virtue of their qualification. They were expected as leaders not to tell people what their jobs were, but to provide an environment in which those people could function. That was the job. And that is all that you needed to do, because every person down your line, there is a tendency when you come to a position such as a commanding officer, there's a tendency to feel, there's real power, because a commanding officer can actually, in battle, can actually order death. He can order a person to be shot. That is the power that a commanding officer holds. And at an age of 38 or 39 or 40 years old, it is a lot of power to have. when many times people talk to me here in civil aviation now about aircraft, how many aircraft did you have in the squadron? I said 20. 20 aircraft? I said, what about men? I said 400 men. So we were at, I had 20 aircraft and 400 men and their families to look after as a wing commander in the squadron. So it is so important, I think, to remain grounded, and most of our seniors showed us the way about how one needs to remain grounded, allow people to function, and be empathetic towards their needs. We were told that for the leader, the only job of a leader is to look after his men. And there was a case in my own squadron when I was posted in Uttarlai, when in one of those darbars, that one of the airmen came up and said that, in the central school in Uttarlai, which is actually just 80 kilometers from the border, to have a softie, we had to drive 250 kilometers. That is how barren and remote this place was. And there was a Kendriya Vidyalaya over there, but there were very few teachers who would get posted there. So this gentleman came up to us in the meeting and said, "Sir, there are no teachers to teach maths to our kids, and there's 11th and 12th, and there's been no teacher for the last 6 months." Now, I was a fighter pilot. I was expected to do many other things. Least of all was to look for a teacher for them. But coincidentally, it just dawned on me that one of the youngsters in my squadron, another fighter pilot, a flying officer who was MSc in mathematics. And I just casually asked him, I said, "Deshu, would you mind, I'll make sure that you do your flying in the morning, and after that, can you just go to the school for 2 hours to teach them?" You will not believe he was a hit. The teachers enjoyed him, the students enjoyed him. The students enjoyed him, and he enjoyed being over there. And the amount of gratitude that those people had for the squadron was tremendous. This not just benefited our squadron men, because the whole station had kids going to that school. So there is this whole thing about leadership that one has to work. As they say, by the seat of the pants. As things emerge, because if you have that attitude that the answer is yes, what is your question? Then I think things move in, and the destiny all works towards solving the universe, as they say, comes together to solve the problems. Now, from here, can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So, not to leave the families aside, our families, I think our wives, most of them were homemakers, primarily because there was very little scope for them to work. Many girls had left their jobs to marry the man that they thought and they knew they loved, but they had to compromise with their own careers to a large extent. And the Air Force, in return, I will not say in return, the Air Force, by its culture, considered the lady as senior to everyone. Even the chief of the air staff, who's an air chief marshal, will stand up if a pilot officer's wife walks into a room. And a pilot officer's wife will never stand up for the chief of the air staff also. So a wife only stands up for the president of India. So that is the chivalry that was taught to us. That is the kind of mentorship that was given to us in the Air Force. It was a close-knit family. And if our seniors came to know from any source that there was some problem, that the man was being abusive, even verbally, he was called to the squadron, he was counseled in many different ways, and made sure that he followed the right path. This commanding officer of a squadron had the powers to attach the man's salary to the wife's account directly. That is how much he could do. No questions asked. So there was the whole orientation was towards why, because they understood, everyone understood that most of the times 24/7 we were at work. Basically, when I say at work, we were always thinking something or the other. I'll quickly narrate. I hope I'm not exceeding the time. So I will tell you about what happened.
I'm sure that everybody is thoroughly engaged, hooked on. Please go on. Do not worry about time. We have a lot of time.
So this was when I was a flight commander before Kargil. This was again when I was in Adharshala, and there's this story that I have written for one of the magazines called "When Buddha Smiled on Us." So this was the nuclear explosion that had happened, the second Pokhran. When that was to happen, our squadron was tasked to man what we call to have 5 aircraft on standby at the end of the April. That means if something was to happen, because usually what happens if any such major activity happens, there are chances that there could be interference from across the border or from countries that do not want it, and they did not want us to do that, the Pokhran too. So it was kept so hush hush that none of us knew. It was a Friday night or a Saturday night, I can't recall exactly, but we had just come back from night flying, and the boys came back with me after about 9:30, 10 in the night, and they said, Monisha, that's my wife, Monisha ma'am sleeps very early, I think today we must wake her up. So they landed up in my house, opened the fridge, took out the food, and by this time my wife had woken up and my daughter Tanya had woken up, and they put on the music and everything was going on, and a party started at 10 in the night in my house. And at 1 in the morning, the air officer commanding of the station came on the phone to say that, they were looking for my CO, because everybody was over here. Nobody was taking their calls, and that was not the age of cell phones. So they kept ringing up various phones, and finally they rang up my house, and he says that, you guys need to man ORP at sunrise, which was like 5 hours from that time. So immediately the whole scene changed. Within seconds, we were all back in our overalls, rushing across, trying to get the aircraft out, get the airmen out, put the missiles onto the planes. And, we were at sunrise, we were all ready to for the task. So there was, like, what I was trying to hint at was that there was no time that you could actually say that, I'm off duty. So under these conditions, it was important that the families and the wives and the children were looked after to the best extent possible. So the other thing that I would like to say before I leave the Indian Air Force part is about, religion and politics. We didn't understand religion at all. In fact, it was officially banned. There was no talk of religion and politics in the crew rooms or anywhere. Often when there was Christmas or when there was a Eid or something like that, we had to rack our brains. Who are the Muslims in the squadron? Because we would call Kazmi Kaz, and we would call Zakaria Zach. So he was always Kaz, and so it was never Shoaib Kazmi. So he was just Kaz, and so Kaz. Oh yeah, I think Kaz is a Muslim. I think we need to go and say hello to him for it's Eid tomorrow. Similarly, it's Christmas. Joe or Zach ke ghar jana hai. That sort of a thing. So religion was nothing. There was just no religion, and thankfully there is still there's no reservation in the Air Force, in the armed forces, Indian armed forces yet, and hopefully it will never come. So therefore, the religion thing was never reared its head at all. And the next thing that was politics. So politics was once again was never discussed, was never encouraged. And that made sure that there was this whole camaraderie was maintained well. So 22 years in the Air Force went by very fast, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I had the good fortune of serving in many places, having good postings. I served overseas. I had the opportunity to be with the UN in Israel. So it was really nice. And from there onwards, for some family reasons, I had to leave the Air Force. So in 2004, I moved on to join commercial aviation, and found myself in Air India. Can we go to the next few slides, please? I think in my talk, Yeah. So this was the MiG-29 that I flew during the Kargil operations. Next slide, please. Yeah. So here we are. So Air India. So 2004, I landed up in Air India. I was an Air Force examiner, which is a big deal as far as the Air Force is concerned, but which meant nothing in Air India. Why I may make this point is because when we joined Air India, we were put in seniority, we were put at the bottom of the junior most pilot. So there was this 22-year-old boy with 200 hours of rotor flying, and Wing Commander Deshpande was an Air Force examiner with 5,000 hours of flying and experience, was slotted below that. Why I bring this point is we took it in our stride. There were 10 of us who came over here, and we realized very quickly, and that is what, once again, I feel, our teachers, our institutions taught us. was that it is, you deal with what is there in front of you. So that is how it happens. We said, no, we leave our baggage behind. Whatever you achieved in the Air Force will come through when time comes. You really don't have to stand on rooftops and talk about your achievement. They will see it as and when it happens. So what it did for us was it allowed us to open our minds and learn what was being taught. This was a different dimension of flying, and I realized that very quickly, that this is very different from fighter flying. This is all about rules, regulations, standard operating procedures. That was all about thinking on your feet. You had to have variables, and here it was that you had to just do a straight-jacketed job. But we realized the importance of that, because you've got so many people that you've got such a dense environment. There are so many aircraft involved in such a small airspace, and you're flying over the Atlantic, you're flying over the Pacific. You really need to be follow the routes very, very meticulously. And if we had actually brought in that, and there again, the difference being, there it was all about mission accomplishment in the Air Force. You had to think different ways and means to be able to achieve that mission. Here it was about safety. Safety was paramount. They said, does not matter. The passenger reaches a little late, doesn't matter. But you don't take chance with weather. You don't take chance with cutting, do not take any shortcuts in your procedures. And you take the right amount of fuel. You make sure that you got all your procedures. We have as many as 16 refresher trainings every year. Every year, 16 times you go back to the training school to keep refreshing your knowledge in various aspects of training. And for a good reason, I think. So that is something which Air India taught me: respect for knowledge, irrespective of the age of the person. Because these boys who were now flying with us as captains, and I was a co-pilot to them, were just about 28, 29 years old. I was 44, 42 or 43 when I joined Air India. And but minute you show them respect, which is what I had learned very early in life, they show respect. They give more than what you deserve. And that's what happened. So you learn faster. Then they would tell us, sir, please teach us a little bit more. Because now having learned the basics of commercial flying, then your ability to apply that was far more than the other guy, because you had that experience, not because you had some fancy intelligence, but just because of your experience, you could actually apply that more. And in an environment where there was mutual interchange of ideas, I think all of us benefited in the process. So that is one thing that Air India really taught me, that you leave your baggage behind when you transition to a new job or a new institution. You need to, the sooner you leave it, the lesser you think about your old thing, the more the more you're likely to learn. So may I have the next slide, just to show you a nice picture of the 747 400, the pride of Air India. Not anymore. It's probably going to get phased out soon. But this was one of the greatest aircraft that flew the skies across the world. And this takes me to the next slide. And the greatest man that I have known not in person, but as an individual, as a good leader, is Mr. J.R.D. Tata. I would strongly recommend all of you to read a book which is called Beyond the Last Blue Mountain. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it is written by Mr. R.M. Lala, who was the secretary to Mr. J.R.D. Not only J.R.D., I think Jamshedji Tata downwards, the legacy that the Tatas have followed has been amazing. We talk about SEZ, we talk about pensions and things like that. Jamshedji Tata in Jamshedpur had started pension, the first person to start pension for civilians in the world. He set up Tata Nagar with schools, with hospitals, with entertainment, with parks and everything. Not because it was required, not because it was required by law. He thought it was necessary for his people, looking after his people. That is what JRD did. And today, Air India, despite its trials and tribulations, is what it is because of this man. He created Air India as such a solid foundation in such adverse circumstances. There was time when people had India was never valued. In the 60s, there was no value for India as it is today. 60s, 70s, nobody considered India as a world player in any case. JRD, a visionary, was a launch customer. Air India was the launch customer for the Boeing 747. He was the first person who said Air India will be all jet airline. When many countries, many airlines like British Airways, Lufthansa were still toying with the idea of the 747, JRD had the vision to place order for the 747 and fly to Europe and America. People challenged him. People said, your airline will fold up. You will never be able to you will never be able to compete against BOAC and others. Believe me, do read this book. And in this book, there is a chapter called Queen of the Skies. It's, I think, about 100 and 150 page chapter where he talks about Air India. People in Switzerland would say, okay, if that is the Air India flight landing, it must be 9 in the morning. So that is how JRD spelled the change in Air India. He made sure that the last person in the company, you will not believe, Nariman Point has a cobbler shop in the Air India building, because he felt that if there is one of the employee has a broken shoe, what would he do? If he has to go back home, I came to work and had a broken shoe, what would he do? So that is the attention to detail that this great man had. And there are many stories. I could talk for hours on JRD, but we are now coming to almost just about 10 minutes left for the talk. So I would really want some questions. So I'll just quickly go to the last slide of this presentation, just to tell you all that you all who are listening to me today, trainers and educators, you are the guiding stars. You're the compass. You're the people like you in my life have guided me to navigate through times, through good times, through not so good times. But just to remind you all that you're the Saptarishis who will be guiding generations to come. And hats off to you all. We as small children have simply followed you. As teenagers, we probably argued, even teased you guys. But I think we have revered you all for all our lives. So thank you very much. And I hope I haven't gone beyond the script. And we're only 10 minutes left, but I'd be happy to take any questions that you all may have.
So firstly, let me tell you, this has been such a fascinating 1 hour listening to you and the finesse with which, the flow with which you took us right from your school time till your professional journey. And this was beautiful.
Thank you very much.
The pictures which you have selected, it also helped us relate. And I could also somewhere draw a corollary between how any profession, even being in education, how it has shaped me. I'm sure everybody else was able to feel the same. But it was so good to listen to you and also see how it applies to us in the profession where we are as educators. So I'm sure people have got questions for you. I would like our participants to unmute and ask the questions directly. Any questions, any comments, thoughts, please feel free to share. It's our profound privilege to have somebody like Pradeep Deshpande ji here with us today. Don't miss the opportunity of having an interaction with him.
Ma'am, Atul sir has posted one question in the chat box.
Right. And we also have some hands raised. Okay. So I'll read it out for you, sir. Okay. Are you able to access the chat box, sir?
No?
Okay, sir. The question is experience as a pilot.
Yeah, first flying experience. Like I was mentioning, why I mentioned my first solo on the MiG-21, because that was an exhilarating moment. My first solo itself that I did which was in the Kiran aircraft was like a horse that goes through lane jumping. It was like that, because in the morning, of course, I had trained for that for about 25-30 hours of training had happened. The day I was supposed to do my solo, I was sent for a solo check. So before the solo check, we had 10 or 12 circuits. Then after that, the person who checked me out did 4 circuits with me and then put me in an aircraft and said, go do 2 circuits. So it was almost mechanical. I just got airborne, did the whole thing, came back and landed. And after that, came back, landed, switched off and came back to the cadets mess. I said, oh, I went solo. So it was almost like that. So like I said, the solo itself, the first solo itself, and I'm being very frank. I mean, I could have easily told you that was the most exciting experience of my life. It was really mind blowing, but it wasn't actually. It was more like a mechanical thing that I went through. But eventually, when I flew and some of the flights that I did, sorties that I did, some of the night flying sorties that I did, when I flew the MiG-21 solo, I think that was great. That was absolutely, I felt fulfilled and I felt, I had achieved something.
So the way you are speaking, you make us actually visualize. So that's amazing. Please start writing books. That's my suggestion to you. Next
Thank
question is by Ms. Devi Priya. She's asking, who was your inspiration?
Oh, my inspiration was actually, if I have to name a person, may soul rest in peace, is a person called Air Marshal T.M. Asthana. Now, Teju Asthana, as he was called in the Air Force, was a young fighter pilot who was our neighbor. And he had just got married and come. He used to ride a bike. He used to wear a fancy helmet and dark Ray-Ban. At that time, I didn't know they were Ray-Bans, but they used to wear those dark glasses. And I knew that he used to fly the MiG-21. So I used to look at him coming back from work and going to work, and I would say, he was my inspiration. As far as being a fighter pilot is concerned. Other than that, my parents, they have influenced me significantly. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, he was officer in the land records department, but he brought in a sense of discipline in us. And although we used to trouble him a little bit initially, but soon, as I turned a teenager, I realized how much all that meant. So yes, I would give a lot of credit to him, to my parents, and to Air Marshal Hastana, who later on I coincidentally worked under. So he was still by the time I joined the Air Force, he was commanding the squadron, and I had the good fortune of actually serving in his unit.
That's very interesting. Your own role model teaching you, training you. That's
yes,
amazing.
absolutely. And he was very fond of me also.
May I?
Ma'am, I
Yes.
have a question.
Yes, you can ask. Smita ma'am, you can go ahead. Then Mr. Pushpendra, you can share your thoughts.
Yes. Namaste, sir.
Namaste, madam.
Your talk was really very, very inspiring, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
salute to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You said that courage is how you manage fear.
Yes.
And sir, I know that in your profession, the kind of courage you people have, I mean, it's very difficult for us to imagine for a common people like us. So I want to understand, how do you learn to manage fear, or what are the ways to manage fear? Because we all are under some kind of fear always, and somewhere that fear holds us back from doing things. So
Right.
what kind of training is given to you to learn to manage your fear?
I think there are a few things. One is responsibility. Minute you are trained to be a leader, minute you start being responsible, like as a parent, you say that it is difficult for you, but actually it is not. Let me tell you, if you find your child crossing the road and something comes, you will jump in front of that vehicle and pull your child away. Nobody is going to teach you that how you need to jump in front of that vehicle and pull your child away. It is because you are responsible for that child. We are taught, here it is your child, it's your child, so it probably comes naturally to you. Where it does not come naturally to you, we are given this responsibility. So if you are responsible for the company or those 10 people who are serving under you, you know, and that is drilled into you, and you know that, and they do the same thing for you. So it's the reciprocation. So when the training is that you as a leader are responsible for these men. And those men know that he is the one who is going to save us. They actually feel that कि हमारे साथ हमको बचाएंगे. So and they serve you in a similar way. There's this question that was asked. There's another guy called Simon Sinek. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. His talks are very inspirational too. And he's talked about the Afghanistan thing, where the U.S. troops, the Marines, when they were in Afghanistan, and a guy had got a lot of injuries trying to save his buddy. So the question he asked him was that, why did you do what you did? He said simply, he would have done it for me. So I think that is how the fear or the courage management, I think, comes in, and the rest of it is, of course, a lot of it goes in terms of training and the confidence that you have in your equipment, in your also in your tactics and the strategy that you devise. I think all these things go together to do it to some extent. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a wonderful answer, sir. And I really agree. If we are responsible, if we feel responsible, that itself takes care of a lot of things, lot of emotions, how to manage
Yes.
that. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thanks.
Excellent question and an equally insightful answer. I would like Mr. Pushpendra to unmute.
Hi, Jai Hind, sir. Good
Jai
evening,
Hind.
ma'am. Namaste, everyone. Sir, I have two questions. One is about night flying that you guys have. So my friend, he flies for Cathay Pacific, and he did 200 hours of night flying. So I wonder, how do you manage? That's my first. And the second one is, why there are so many Zoroastrians as a pilots?
Well, to answer your first question, night flying is very different from day flying, primarily because we all essentially fly, or we orientate ourselves as a human body. We orientate ourselves with our eyes, touch, feel, and the vestibular canals which are there in the middle ear. So that is what keeps you basically oriented towards. So what night flying does is, why night flying becomes a little challenging is because night flying actually takes away the visual cues from you completely. So devoid of visual cues, one gets to depend on the semicircular canal. So if I put you in a merry-go-round and ask you to close your eyes, you'll never be able to stand straight. In fact, open your eyes, you won't be able to stand straight because the thing goes round and round. And if you close your eyes, you'll definitely fall because the visual cues are not available to you. So night flying has its own challenges, and therefore night flying is usually introduced very gradually into the training schedule or training program of a pilot. But having mastered those things, also the equipment today has improved a lot, and there are a lot of things which guide you to do those things. But yes, night flying is challenging, but there are ways to overcome it. And the most of the navigational aids that we use during the day are also the same that are used at night, in addition to a few others. And as far as why Zoroastrians are so many Zoroastrians are pirates, I think it is more credit must go to JRD, because he's the first person. He's actually the license holder. His license number is 1. He is the first pilot of India, and so his license number is 1. And I think he encouraged the community here to come into flying, and also flying. Civil flying, commercial flying is a little expensive because one has to do it. One has to pay a lot for the flying, and the Parsis have been an affluent community. I think that could be another reason. And then once again, you get a critical mass. When that happens, then more people around you kind of get fascinated and join. I will find a lot of Parsis are bike riders also. And,
all right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for recommending Mountain Blue, the book by Lala, sir. I have read that, a bit of it, but I think I'm going to read it again. The book.
Yes, you must, absolute must.
I would also be reading it for sure. So we have one student, Devanjot. She has a question for you.
Sure.
Devanjot, please unmute yourself.
Your story was very inspirational for me.
Thank
I
you.
have 2 questions. The first question is, will you give me any suggestions? Because I also want to become a commercial pilot.
Yes, that's a question.
Yes.
Sure, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to do that, to guide you to become a commercial pilot. But I would still nudge you to become an Air Force pilot first. There are girls who join the Air Force, and it's a wonderful flying, and you can come back and become a commercial pilot. That's the best part. So you do about 10 or 15 years of flying in the Air Force, do the nice things in the Air Force, flying through the mountains, dropping people, parachutists from your aircraft, doing formation flying. Isn't it more interesting than just going from A to B and B to A? You can always do that, but I would still strongly recommend that you join the Air Force and then come back and fly commercially. But not having said that, if you still want to become a commercial pilot, I'll be more than happy to help you. So I will share. Dr. Jaya would have my email ID and the telephone. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'll guide you in many ways.
I have one more question. That have you met Captain Vikram Batra?
Have I met Vikram Batra? No, sadly, he was in my vicinity, but I did not meet him because we were in Avantipur, and the army was already deployed near Kargil. So because as an Air Force pilot, we have to take off from the runway, Priyanka. So we don't really go into the fields. So Vikram Batra and the others were all in the field, and we were giving them air cover. We were flying the fighter planes over Tiger Hill so that the enemy aircraft won't come and interfere with the operation of our army, which is trying to climb the hill. So to answer your question, no, so sadly, I didn't have the privilege of meeting him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. She sat with me and listened to your inspiring story.
Thank you. I'm honored.
All the best to Devanjot. She would definitely make us proud. So we have a question from Ms. Prajakta. She asked that what age can we admit our children in NDA? And I think this also, if you could club it with another question, your answer for another question by our student, Arpan Sahu, what one should do to get to become a pilot?
Right. So to answer the first question first, to join the NDA, now the age is from between 17 and 19 and a half. So after you finish your class 12, you appear for a UPSC open examination. And then based on your position, qualification, and in merit, you would be called for what is called a service selection board. And once the service selection board is over, to qualify for that, you go through a medical, and then they prepare a merit list. And then depending on the vacancies that are available for that particular course, you're inducted into NDA. Every 6 months, these vacancies come out. And every 6 months, I think approximately on an average, 300 to 350 boys are selected for NDA each year. The numbers are usually the least for the Navy. So maybe about 50 to 60 for the Navy, about 100 for the Air Force, and the remaining are for the Army. And the second question was, how does one become a pilot? No, what is the question?
Yes. So maybe trying to understand what one has to do after
How does one
schooling.
prepare?
Yes.
After
what
school.
does one? Yes. How does one prepare?
Yeah, the most important thing is determination. So you said, I am determined to be a pilot, because you can't train to be a pilot. Before that, you have to preferably take science and maths for your graduation, in case you want to do it. In case you're not going through NDA, you could join the Air Force even after doing your graduation as a direct entry person. So do it with science and maths, because that will help you. Otherwise, it will disqualify you from joining as a pilot. So you need science and maths. And you need these, what we call the pilot aptitude. So we have a pilot aptitude test, which can be taken only once in your lifetime. If you fail the pilot aptitude test, you'll never become a pilot in the Air Force. And it is conducted just once. There are no repeats. So idea being that they want to truly see what is your aptitude, how your psychomotor skills are. So that is a very scientific test that is conducted once in your lifetime. And so these are the two things. Other than that, once you join the Air Force or once you go to a flying school, they'll tell you everything about it. So keep yourself medically fit, keep yourself physically fit, and keep yourself. Don't have to be a genius. You don't even have to be above average. Just need to be, I would say, average plus, and that's it. You should be good to go.
Fantastic. I would like Miss Champa to unmute and ask her question.
Thank you, ma'am. Namaste, sir.
Namaste, ma'am.
So my question is, actually, my brother was planning to go for the NDA after 12th, but he couldn't. So now he's pursuing his electrical engineering third year, and he is parallelly preparing for SSB. So he just wanted, after listening to your thought, he was curious that if sir could give some tips to clear, so that would be very helpful for him.
Yeah. So what I'll do is, it'll take a long time to be able to tell you this thing, the tips for him to clear his SSB. I'm more than happy to contact that. If he can call me up one of these days, I'll give him a complete rundown on what he needs to and how he needs to prepare. but you bring out a very important point that many times what happens is people realize that they need SSB preparation just before they are called for the SSB. And towards that, I've been associated with a lot of youth, and I've been telling them, I said, personality development doesn't happen in 3 months. It cannot happen through a course. Personality development is a lifetime exercise. So you need to understand that you have to develop your personalities, and teachers and educators have been doing that, and I would urge them to do that, to do a little bit more, because today what is happening, I do find that people are only oriented towards what they need to know, excessively specialized. You know, if I ask, I was surprised when I asked an engineering student, can you just tell me the neighboring countries of India? He didn't know the difference between whether Kathmandu was a city or whether Nepal was a city or Nepal was a state. And in our school in class 8th and 7th, these were things that were, you know, you always knew currencies. You knew the currencies, the state capitals, you knew your neighboring countries, the rivers of India, you know, those kinds of things. So, and that, not because that is so important, but that is what brings in that element of curiosity in your mind. That when the curiosity sets in, then the personality develops. You cannot, just by doing spoken English or just by wearing a nice dress or grooming yourself, the personality doesn't come. So having said that, I'm more than happy to help your brother. And for the others, I would just say that, just encourage kids to start developing their personality from an early age.
Thank you so much, sir. He has been working hard from the time, because from the school time he just hadn't thought
That's
of
good.
going into it. So I'm just praying that he work on a proper path.
No, I'm sure if that is what he's been doing, I'm sure he'll be able to do it. Just contact me. I'll share my number, and I'll be more than happy to do that.
Thank
Sure,
you, sir.
I'll provide the number to Ms. Champa, and best wishes to your brother. We have Mr. Pushpendra again raising his hand. Do you want to ask a question, or is it the hand from previous question? Okay. So I think it's time for you also now to wrap up, because you have given us more than or almost 1.5 hours. I would also like our audience to know that the character that sir has been talking about, I have actually experienced and witnessed it in so many ways in the last just 5-6 days that I have been in touch with sir. It was actually the talk scheduled today by Colonel Venkat. He could not make it. Another person from the armed forces, so sincere, so disciplined. He was so guilty that he would not be able to do duty due to a demise in his family. And he took it as a responsibility upon himself, reached out to Pradeep sir and got a confirmation from him. And I could see within 2-3 days, sir prepared for this talk. As we all know, he did not need to prepare. His life is like an entire movie, so many anecdotes to enjoy. But we are really privileged. We are honored that you gave us time. Thank you for being an Aadharshila for us. We look forward to your continued mentorship and guidance.
Thank you.